see you on here. My name's Neil. I'm a wellbeing coach here at Isseropia. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on this Friday. I'm quite glad it's Friday. How
Yep,
about you?
absolutely. End of the week.
End of
Yeah.
the week. So hopefully we've got some plans around the weekend. The weather's actually changing a little bit, especially around here. So I've just been out there now, and the sunshine was quite warm, wasn't it,
Really,
Catherine?
actually went out just in my shirt.
There you go. And there was a bit of a chill in the air still. But so I'm Neil, as I say, I'm a wellbeing coach, and with me today is Catherine. Catherine will introduce herself as well, and we're going to actually be talking around the fear of getting well. Many of us can struggle when we've actually invested a lot of time on our mental well-being, then actually presenting ourselves in a totally different concept. If you can imagine situations where you're an unwell person, you kind of start to have a little bit of a character around you. When you do actually invest a lot of time in your well-being and you become better and you have different skills available to you, like managing to reconnect with other people and all those different elements, that in itself can bring a lot of fear, which is why we're going to have a little discussion around the fear of getting well, because we don't want that obstacle to kind of stand in our way. So I've just seen Sarah.
Yeah.
Hello, Sarah. Really good to see you. It was nice to bump into you just before Christmas. Hope that went okay for you, and it's great to see you on here. So just very quickly, why are we doing these live streams? Where we obviously are aware that engagement and in contact with ourselves and yourselves, some people find it very, very difficult to come and see us. It might be that you're not yet engaging with a mental health service, but you're having some struggles. So this is a really good platform where we can kind of get to know you. You can get to know a little bit about Isseropia. You can share some experiences, and you can comment as much as you wish. Just based on the comments there, we are streaming live. So if there's anybody that feels possibly not in a position to comment, then it's just to let you know that other people will see those comments. So if you want to keep it to yourself, then that's absolutely fine. Just sit back, have a listen, see if anything connects with you, and see if you can get some tips and tricks from some of the things that both myself and Catherine have had to face in our mental health journey. So who are we? We are not therapists, although we do have information around therapeutic and ways of dealing with mental health concerns. I don't have any kind of certification in therapy or anything like that. Yeah. We are really focused on what challenges each individual has. So we're very much person-centered. We need to get to know how people struggle, and we struggled ourselves, but we found ways of being able to move ourselves from some really painful emotions and all those types of things by using some tools and tips and tricks that we've kind of gained through coming not only through Isseropia, but through some support systems. So it would be great today if you wish to kind of ask a question, and both Catherine and I will have a think around it. Maybe it'll be something that I did that helped me that might well help you, or what Catherine did, and the same applies. One key thing about any mental health struggle, you would agree with this, Catherine, is we all have the same thing. We all have a mental health issue, but it's all completely different based on that individual. We often talk about how emotions can affect us, and the same kind of emotion could affect me far differently than Catherine or any of you guys. So it's a really good platform to get some understanding about some of the issues that you might face, especially when you're moving from unwellness to wellness. That in itself is a massive, massive step. And you'll talk about this in a minute, Catherine, how we can actually use lots and lots of energy to reach a point and feel pretty satisfied and happy and content of where we are. And then it's going to do some things that are scary, because you might feel like you're a completely different person. So we'll have a discussion around that. So by all means, as we go along, any comments, we will put a few comments up that we've had a discussion around, and some of the things that we have found that lots and lots of people struggle with when they're moving from unwellness to wellness. So we'll pop those up and hopefully generate a little bit of a conversation around those. But obviously, when you comment on here, there may be something specific to you, then we'll pick it up hopefully, and we'll be able to kind of have a look at that and see what we can offer on that. Now, being live is dependent on how many people are actually engaging with us at the moment. Sometimes we get lots and lots of comments come through, sometimes not so many, but we will try and focus on those as much as we can. But the most important part is just that discussion point. So if you post something and we miss it, it's not really something we're doing deliberately. It's because sometimes they can actually move off our screen. Okay, so we'll just talk about that. So first of all, hopefully, well, not hopefully, I certainly found when I came from unwellness to wellness, there was a whole element of fears around me. And one of the key things that I learnt during my journey was how to start identifying what those key fears were. Did you have the same kind of experience, Catherine?
Yeah, I did. So, you know, when you've been ill for quite a while, especially if you've suffered from depression, your whole brain, your whole actions, your behaviors, everything that you do can be totally different to a well person. Now, I know I got very comfortable in feeling unwell. It was safety for me. So that was my little zone of safety. I had support, I had time off work, everything there was very different to how I used to be. So when you're in that position for a long period of time, it's really difficult for you to actually identify this new person, who this person's going to be. And I think that it's just feel safe in your comfort zone. Now, the fears that I had, so some of the fears were, can I do this? Am I going to be able to do this new role that in my life? Am I going to be able to, especially if you've been off work? I think that's really hard because you're out of your routine that you might have done for years. So being off work keeps you in your comfort zone, your safety zone. So for me, I wasn't sure that I could actually go back into the working world. I wasn't sure if the people who were there would like the new me, you know, because you've got that fear as well. What is this new me? A better version of what was there before, or is this new me something that perhaps other people might not see as being better? I mean, from my point of view, it's a lot better. But yeah, you do get this sense of normal when you're ill, of what your whole brain works in that way, so that you have this sense of I can do this in my comfort zone, but can I do it out of my comfort zone? And that's, you know, one of the biggest things, the fears.
I was quite interested in the fact you had that fear of going back to work, and that in itself creates lots and lots of fears. I had the same kind of thing when I started to come back to work. Was I almost felt that I had to start being responsible, if that makes sense. So even the fear of becoming responsible for my own well-being and going back into an environment that really scared the life out of me for quite a period of time. And then getting back into work, you also have fears around whether you're going to fit back in again. And I like the fact that you said you kind of start to question yourself. And would you say it certainly was for me that was easy to slip back to some old coping mechanisms that I used to have?
Yeah, absolutely. and I think sometimes we almost do a little bit of sabotaging as well in your way to improve. So there is, I know, just a little bit of self-sabotage perhaps just holds us back in that comfort zone, because a little part of your brain is so nervous about going back in and back out, you know, back into the world, the real world, without all your comforts, without your supports. Like I said before, you know, you might be seeing people, counsellors, you might be going through us and coming to attending workshops. All that seems absolutely fine, but then you have to do it on your own.
On your own, absolutely.
And that's a really key problem. I think for me, it was, because I had to go out there on my own and front all these people and things.
Yeah, I had, it's quite interesting, isn't it? We kind of invest a heck of a lot of time. When we reach the point where we feel that we need to get some help with our mental health, hopefully, well, not hopefully people will start to understand when they actually need some assistance and they need some help, which is why, you know, Isseropia is here and a lot of other mental health things. When we made that decision and we decide that we're going to invest quite heavily on doing some work around improving our mental health, and that could be how we, you know, come away from depression, how we battle anxiety, how we can start to understand how our mood regulation is important. So what I was trying to get to is we invest a lot of energy.
We do.
And then when we get to the point of then, like you said, and quite rightly so, it's almost like use your own wings, go out there and do it, and do it for yourself.
Yeah.
That in itself creates lots of fear. We gave a list. Catherine and I were talking about what kind of fears did we kind of face, and then we had things like fear of relationships.
Yeah.
We had fear of your new identity, effectively.
Yeah.
There was lots of different fears. You've got a few that you wanted to just kind of talk about some of the fears that you had to overcome.
I mean, fears are just in there all the time, and actually we've just put up there think about how it makes you feel. So it's a really good point now actually to think, well, one of my fears was, like I said before, are people going to like this new me? So that takes a lot of soul searching on myself. How is that making me feel? Well, that's making me feel nervous then about going out into the real world. And so in some respects, like I said before, I'm almost sabotaging myself by putting barriers in the way of actually tackling and confronting those fears, which I think we have to do, because we will never get well unless we confront our fears at this point on our journey. And, you know, we could spend a lot of time worrying about new things and going back out into the world and on your own. I know, like, I just felt very isolated when I went back out because, like I said before, we've had so much support. I came through Isseropia myself, had lots and lots of support here, and then it was gone. You know, it was gone. I had to go back to work where there wasn't the support. People were busy. Things were just going on and on, you know, around me, and I had to slot straight back into them full speed almost. And it's really tough to do. I mean, but I will say it is possible to do. It's absolutely possible to do. And I think from my experience, I've managed to confront the fears.
Yes.
And actually challenge myself to overcome them.
I agree. And I don't think, well, for me personally, I don't think I would have been able to do that had I have not invested the time initially.
No,
when you're talking about self-sabotaging, I became quite aware of that in terms of when you were having your experiences and I was having mine and those fears kicked in. It's the ability, and I only learned this through the workshops, is to start thinking about what that thought pattern might be. When you're talking about how does it make you feel, a lot of the feelings are perfectly natural when you're doing something new and doing something that you might have a little bit of concern around.
And I'll just talk about this.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is only my second live, and I've had quite a few fears this morning about coming on here, but you know, I just was determined to do it. And whatever fears I've had, I've tried to just move them to one side and think about the positives. So, what am I going to get from doing this? How is it going to make me feel? What benefits are there to me? So, perfectly timed as well about how you think about how it makes you feel. So, try and weigh it up. And that's what I did this morning. So, if I chose, and I probably could have done, said, look, I really can't do this morning.
Yeah.
Someone else would have stepped in, but how would that have made me feel? Would that have helped me on my recovery journey? It wouldn't. So I put myself out here, and I'm giving it a go, and you know, hopefully helping other people who've, you know, experiencing situations that I have really over the last 4 years. So yeah, it's yeah.
I pick a few bits out of
Yeah.
that because you know Catherine's quite right. We had a discussion not 5 minutes before. Catherine's been relatively busy this morning,
Yeah.
and then came back, and there was a quick realization that she's now got to come and do this, and she's absolutely right. She could have quite easily bailed.
Yeah.
But she said, I'm going to have to face this fear. And it's something you said a little bit earlier. What you resist persists, yes?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So effectively, what would have happened, Catherine, if you kind of decided that you weren't going to go and take that plunge, you would momentarily probably lose that kind of fear and all that kind of, but that's so short-lived. And then an hour later, what would that have done?
Well, it would have stayed with me, wouldn't it, till the next time? And actually, it would have built up the fear more because last time I managed to get out of it. So it would have made it worse because the next time probably I would have had to have done it, definitely. So I think we've just got to, you know, like Neil said earlier about the energy, you know, have that energy. It does take so much energy to get better. No one is going to say that it's an easy job. It really isn't an easy job. It's putting in your own effort, be motivated to see a change in yourself and just feel what it feels like to be successful.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it's really important that we all get to feel, right, for so long I've been in this place of misery, you know, and everything about it is making me feel upset and just lacking any energy or motivation to actually get better at all. But actually, if we put ourselves through it, it will be an awful lot better for us. So yeah, you really got to fight your fear. You've got to confront your fear. You've got to think about, now we've just had put up there, what are the thoughts associated with this fear? So how, you know, what are you thinking about? So your personal fear of, if you were to choose something that you would like to tackle, like me with the live this morning, it could be an event, one thing that you want to do, and you put in energy and preparation and planning before in order for you to be able to do that event, then you will have much better chance of succeeding. And then you get to feel what it's like to do it. And you cannot get that feeling anywhere else, can you, Neil?
You can't. It's quite interesting in some of the things that you said when we talk quite often about comfort zones and pushing yourself out of comfort zones. We all do need a comfort zone in some respects, but it's like exactly what we said. What's the thing that is likely to make you self-sabotage? And it's just keeping that mindset and changing it around. So for instance, the scenario we've just been talking about, had Catherine not have done that, then that would have had a negative benefit. We are now in a position, especially me anyway, to kind of look at these things and think about, I might actually enjoy doing this. It might be of benefit to me. And that in itself is something that kind of just grows and grows and grows, doesn't it? So you kind of get that one under your belt, and then you think next time, this is not going to be so scary. It's not going to be so difficult. And that's when we flourish in terms of we can start to bring back things in our life that actually give us that sense of enjoyment, that sense of connection, and all those types of things. And the other thing that I did pick up with what you're saying is sometimes our perception of something is totally out of character. One of the things that when we were talking about that, Catherine was saying, I wonder what are people going to think of me when I stand in front of the camera? Are they going to be judging me? Are I going to be doing this? And the reality of that, you can see from the comments that are coming through, is totally out of character. And that's when we're talking about some fears. And one of the key things is fear of getting well. It's almost like you're not a whole new person. You have become an authentic, real person,
version of yourself, isn't it?
Absolutely. And along with that, to be fair, in my experience, is there are certain things that will happen naturally. And what I mean by that is you kind of start to create a group of people that understand you. They understand that you're true and authentic. And some of those elements where you didn't want to do that, and I'm sure many people here might suffer with this, many of the things that you kind of felt but you weren't able to do when you were unwell, it's quite scary when you're able to do that. I'm trying to get to the point of, it's almost like if you want to create a social circle, for argument's sake, you're in control now instead of out of control. What I mean by that is your circle of connection will be with the right kind of people that understand you and you understand them. That might be big, it might be small, but it's almost like you're actually in the driving seat. I don't know how you felt when I was unwell, but I certainly wasn't in the driving seat in any way, shape or form.
No, and it's actually only, like you say, as you begin to do those things, and actually quite often the fear is worse than the actual thing itself. So, you've just got to push through sometimes what your fears are, because in the reality, it may not be that bad. And actually, if you do push through, you get that feeling that I said before. And like Neil was just saying then, it's sort of then you get it more and you get it more, and it snowballs one thing after the other. So, for example, for myself, when I did actually start to push myself, which was really when I joined Isopia, but I was fully motivated to attend all the workshops. I set that goal for myself so that I was able to get myself well. But yeah, it's just I am now a different person, and I know I am, to the person that was in that comfort zone. And it's only if you can let yourself out into out of your comfort zone that you'll actually start to earn some of those rewards back to you. And one thing, like I said, leads to something else. I volunteered here at Isopia to help me break through that get back to work. So there's lots of things that people can do that are, like volunteering work, that will just push you out of your comfort zone just that little bit, and hopefully give you some satisfaction that actually you can see that you enjoyed that.
And here's a little bit of feedback for you, Catherine, because I was a wellbeing coach whilst Catherine was coming through. There's a couple of things there in terms of what you were saying. You actually invested a lot of time on your mental well-being, and you got the tools, and you've now got the employment in the organization, so you're giving that back. But as I know you, you're not a different person. You're different in aspects. You're still Catherine, and I'm still Neil. But what Catherine now has in abundance is she's decided to do the right things that bring her the satisfactions, the confidence, and that's where you flourish. You're very confident. You actually enjoy it. You've really kind of understood the benefit of that time investment. And now you're in a position where you're able to impart that back. So what I was trying to get there is you're not a different person.
Right.
You're just kind of, you have the right kind of things that you needed to bring that enjoyment into your life.
And it was that investment, wasn't it? It was.
Absolutely.
I made that commitment that I was going to put 100% of my effort into Isopia and to get better. You know, I knew that it was going to be difficult, and it was. It's never been for anyone a smooth journey, has it? Into from your comfort zone of being ill into your wellness. It's not a smooth journey. It's not going to be done in a week, and so what you do have to do is invest that energy, and you've got to keep on doing the energy, putting in that energy day after day. And I know that can feel really difficult when you don't feel like you've got any energy at all, but it's deciding, right, I'm going to tackle this. And I noticed earlier that Sarah, hi Sarah, nice to hear from you. So I noticed Sarah said that she's got a fear of social anxiety, and I'm absolutely 100% with you on that one, Sarah. I have had terrible social anxiety all my life. I didn't know I had social anxiety. I just hated meeting people and going out into situations. I didn't know that that's what it was. I just thought it was me, and I was a bit strange compared to other people. But it's really difficult when you've got social anxiety, because one of the things that we like to say about getting better is make a contact with other people, and have support from other people. But you don't actually want to communicate with other people. You very much want to stay on your own. But I will tell you, Sarah, that after I made the decision that I was going to get myself better, and after my journey started a little bit, it wasn't overnight. It took a while, but I'm now happy to go into pubs or restaurants with people. I went out with a couple of people on Tuesday, my daughter's boyfriend's parents. Well, I'd never met them. They've been going out for about 3 years. Well, I had massive social anxiety at that point, because what are they going to be like? Am I going to freeze? Am I not going to be able to talk? Am I going to go bright red and not be able to speak any words? All those things went through my mind. But what I could see as the prize at the end of it was the completion of it. My daughter would be really happy with me if I make that effort. So I tried to think of all the reasons why I should do it, and they heavily outweighed the shouldn'ts. And I just thought, look, just give it a go. They're probably as anxious as me, and I think that's the way you've got to look at these things, is actually think about each thought that you're having to do with that particular anxiety. So for you, Sarah, it might be social anxiety. Think about the fears that you've got, and then actually think, well, what am I going to get from it? What's the positives for me if I manage to do this? I'm going to have some uncomfortableness. Absolutely. But actually, is the positives going to be so much better than the negatives? And on Tuesday I did that in my head. I still do that even now. Think of those fears, think of the positives, think of the negatives, and make a decision that will actually benefit you. Because then I came away, I got that little reward. I think it's so important. All these little rewards that you get, that you just soak up for each little step. And you're not going to come out of your comfort zone overnight. This is not going to happen. And you're just going to chip away at it, and you're just going to start feeling out of your comfort zone. I think that takes time.
I think you hit it in a nutshell. Is when we use our comfort zone too much, it starts to reduce, and then it starts to build barriers. So it just gets smaller and smaller. And when we're talking about things like social anxiety, especially any kind of anxiety, what we tend to do is, one of the coping mechanisms that many of us kind of take is to disconnect.
Yeah.
It might be disconnect from, I don't know, family members, disconnect from social engagements, disconnect from lots of different things. And then you find yourself kind of trapped a little bit. But then it builds itself. So you start to become anxious about being anxious, and it starts to reduce a bit more.
Yeah.
When you work hard, or we've found this, your comfort zone starts to expand, and it becomes so much easier to expand it when we take that first step. If you take that first step and you start to actually identify the feelings and the thoughts long term you've had as a direct result of that, a little bit about your story, that motivates you and pushes you to do other things.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about the fear of getting well, sometimes we have got the skills, we have got everything, and it's going back to what Catherine said a little bit earlier. We can sometimes subconsciously and consciously self-sabotage because it's uncomfortable. We then start to possibly go back to some of the coping mechanisms. I love the fact that you spoke about your job. You had that kind of critical point, didn't you, where you had to make a decision.
Yeah.
Do I do it or do I not?
Yeah.
And then you talked us around the uncomfortable feelings that you were having. And then you take that step.
Yeah.
And now the overall thing, you've probably, forgive me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but you probably felt, or you feel at the moment, better than you have been for many, many years. Is that fair to say?
It is, Neil. Yes, it is. I get up very happy person these days to come here and work here, definitely. But it hasn't been easy, you know, and I had to make a lot of decisions along the way. And I think, you know, for all of us that are getting better, you do have to make a lot of decisions about what's right for you, and you have to start to take control a little bit more of your life and where you're going. So, you know, I was a teacher. It wasn't working for me. I tried to go back to work, and it just didn't work for me. But I've come here to Isopia, and it definitely is working for me. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, are you going to be a teacher for the rest of your career? Yeah, I'd said yes.
I remember you saying that on other occasions.
Yeah. But, you know, that's only because I stepped outside my comfort zone. You know, like I volunteered here at Isopia, so that we were talking about volunteering before. There are a number of things that we can do when we're trying to get better that will just help us push outside that zone. So what are the benefits of staying in your old comfort zone? I mean, I know lots of you probably feel really comfortable sitting in your comfort zone. I did. I didn't want to change anything at all. I was happy. I knew what my day was like. But you can't stay there forever. You know, you can't. And I knew that if I did, my life would actually not be that worth living, really. There wasn't a lot there because I didn't have anything to go to or do. There was nothing that I could take satisfaction from. And I think that's what we've all got to try and find, just something that we can do that'll just push us out and give us some satisfaction, so that we then have the momentum to keep this going.
Absolutely. And just, I'm going to pick up with Sarah's comment that she's put. She says, social anxiety has ruined my life, to be honest. I struggle to see myself properly functioning in society again. You know, this is not a quick fix for any of you guys, but that's the kind of impact it can have on our mental health. You know, I'm not picking that comment out deliberately, but you can see how much of a blockage it can create. And then when we sit with that feeling for a long period of time, it's so much harder, isn't it, to break it?
Yeah, it is.
So if we find that we've suffered with, we seem to be talking a little bit around anxiety, but if we've suffered with anxiety for long periods, even the thought of doing something that's going to make you feel uncomfortable makes you more anxious.
Yes, it does.
And this is something I learned quite quickly. is if you don't do that, it goes back to what I was talking about. Your world starts to shrink. So sometimes I keep using this phrase, you've got to become comfortable with feeling uncomfortable for a period of time.
You do.
Because feelings are feelings. I don't know if you gathered this, but they are feelings.
Yeah.
And they do pass. Now, however intense that feeling is, it will pass.
It will. Yeah.
And I start to think about things like, and I'm going to talk about it, when COVID-19 first came to light, that created lots of emotion for lots and lots of people. Yeah. And I know it's not happened yet, but those feelings are starting to pass, the same as the issue, if that's making sense.
Yeah.
So whatever the feeling is, it's almost kind of trying to get the skill of understanding it's a feeling and it's how we react to that feeling.
Yeah.
And sometimes that feeling is so uncomfortable that you do whatever. You might take another mechanism to cope.
Yeah.
But what we try and identify is that is a feeling. And if you take the appropriate action, then you get the right kind of results. And another comment that came up a minute ago is a tool that really helped me. And I don't know if you remember, which was the Crossroads of Happiness. And that really kind of gets people to understand, doesn't it? That you have an opportunity, or you have to make a decision about something. And you normally have an option of, invariably it's a yes or a no. Do I go to this social gathering or do I not? And we get people to have a look at how they would feel for a momentarily period of time. So if they say they're not going to go to this social gathering, they will probably get the good feelings. You know, they'll feel comfortable. They're going to feel safe. They're going to feel all that. But long term, they're probably going to be in a position where they're saying they're beating themselves up effectively. The other way is when you say, yes, I'm going to go, that in itself, when you say yes, creates all those feelings that we might actually deter from. So you are going to feel anxious, worried, concerned, all those kinds of things. But the long-term plan, and this is linking back to exactly what you were saying, is the benefits are enormous. And that's the kind of feelings that hang around a lot longer
actually. And like I keep saying about these little rewards, that's what it's like. And you've got to take those, because actually they will make you feel better than that very short-lived feeling that you're talking about. And like I said, when I started to do things, I just decided on one thing at a time. There's no point opening your life up and say, right, I've got to get back to work, I'm going to start meeting all my friends again. It doesn't work like that. You've just got to focus on something that you feel is important to you, that you'd really like to do. And like Neil says, sometimes we do have to just sit with those feelings, accept that they're there, because they are feelings. They're not actually going to do us any harm. And if you feel and sit with those and then push through them, the next time it's going to be so much easier. And then the time after that, it'll be easier. And that's just what I did, just bit by bit by bit. And it took a while. You know, it took a while, but you don't notice over the months. You know, you go from being an ill person to being a really well person. You yourself probably won't actually notice this. This is what happened to me. I didn't notice the change in myself at all. But other people around me did notice. They noticed that I was going out more, you know, and speaking to them more. And they'd contact me because I made the effort to go out. They understood as well, I've got to say. And I think most of our friends around here will understand where your situation is, where you're coming from, and they will help you and want to support you to enable you to get to wherever it is you want to be. So for example, could be that you want to go out and meet with a couple of friends for a coffee, okay, and that could be terrifying, because to get there you might have to go on the bus. You don't know who's going to be on the bus, you've got to walk to your cafe, who you're going to meet, what's it going to feel like when you get in there. You sort of go through this entire journey in your head. before you actually do the event. But if you can get there, one of your friends might say, well, I'll meet you outside, or I'll come into your house and we'll go together. I absolutely know that I had one significant friend who used to make a real effort to come and pick me up so we could go to events together. So I never had to enter, because I think that's a difficulty. I don't know if other people share the same view as well. You never have to enter a place on your own. If you enter a place on your own, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, I could not do that at all. So I was switched off from going anywhere before it even started. But you get somebody to, you know, to say, can you come and meet me, and then we'll go in together. So I really think that if you can think around it and try and think of solutions and ways that you could actually manage this, I think that'd be really good.
It's quite an interesting thing. It's just come up on the screen there. What small steps can you take to confront these negative thoughts that you might be having? And that's really kind of interesting. I just want to allude back to something that you said about feelings. My experience was, when I kind of had a feeling, I tried to just dismiss that feeling by doing something else. It's almost like I was batting it off. And one key thing that somebody said to me is, you shouldn't try to dismiss the feeling. You should accept the feeling, and, using your phrase, sometimes have to sit with it. And then we get to understand that a feeling is a feeling. And once we get to understand that it will pass over a period of time, it stops you from doing the things that, when I say you dismiss them and you kind of do something else to get rid of that feeling, then it's not really tackling what that feeling's about.
No.
And that's when we're talking about negative thought patterns. I don't know if you kind of struggle with this. I still do from time to time, to be perfectly honest. Is when we're not entirely well, we focus on the wrong things. What we focus on is the things that we're worried about. What if I do that and it goes wrong? What if I do that and someone will look at me differently? What if I do that and somebody starts to judge me? And some of the time that's perception. But what we tend to do with thoughts is we look at what problems that's going to cause, as opposed to having the thought and thinking, what opportunities can that thought bring to me? And is it fair to say, Catherine, that this is not something that you just fix and it disappears? You have to work hard on it every single day.
Absolutely. And even though I consider myself well, I'm still struggling with things like yourself, Sarah, and Lindsay, you're up there, that I still have these doubts in myself. But I've learned to, like Neil just said then, try and think of so I don't want to go because of this, and this. Try and think of but if I went, this might happen. If I went, I might have a really nice time seeing somebody. You know, it could be family. I know, Lindsay, you've said about friends, but what happens? Do you have any family members that are nearby? You know, so there must be somebody. Generally, people have got somebody that they can rely on. And like I said, I had just one key friend who just looked out for me all the time. This was a work friend. Whenever I needed to do anything, because work was difficult for me. I've got to be honest. You know, even when you get well and you go back to work, it's difficult. You know, you have to start to learn how to do your job as the new you, almost. You know, slightly different. It is a really difficult thing to do. But you know, I just want to say to people, just keep going, keep trying anything at all. I'm just looking at Lindsay. She's got her children.
I'd like to pick up on what Lindsay's trying to explain there, because this kind of thing is not unusual. She says, what if you don't have any friends? And then she says none, and then just my children. This was something that I had to work out myself, Lindsay. Is it that the friends I have are possibly the wrong friends. That's when I was unwell. And then I started to look at the things, is maybe I'm not doing the things that will create kind of friendships, if that makes sense, because of some of the things that were getting in the way. We've been talking a little bit about anxiety. Yeah. The reason why I found myself having no friends, because I was scared to try and create some kind of friendship. Yeah. So you have the protective factor of just your children. So that is kind of a social connection. But in people that struggle with that, really, what I found beneficial is to understand, do friendships mean something? Will it give me the feelings that I want to give? And if the answer is no, then I don't have to worry about trying to get some friends together. But if the answer is yes, then I started to investigate why I am in a position where I have no friends. And I started to discover it's because of some of my coping mechanisms was stopping me engaging with anybody. And when once you start understanding and using tools, you can, is it fair to say, start to create relationships, which is what we often talk about. Is social connection is so important, not only with mental health struggles. It's so important from a human perspective. We all want to be in a position where we have somebody that we rely on, somebody that we feel safe around, somebody that we trust implicitly. So we quite often say that's almost like a key fundamental thing that we need to create. And I do understand where Lindsay's coming from, is because when you're not well, you kind of really want to get something back, but you're so stuck with maybe anxiety or not having the tools to be able to break that. Then that plays havoc. If you say I have no friends, that overwhelmingly makes your emotions change, because you'll feel sad and all those types of things,
and almost against people.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? And that sort of drives that divide even more, doesn't it, between you?
And then Lindsay's just come back, and you've kind of really opened up an inquiry and answered your own question there. Yet my anxiety gets the better of me, which stops me from actually bringing something into my life. And how you overcome things like anxiety, like we have both discussed, is extremely difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult. I think anxiety is the hardest things actually to overcome to get yourself well. But for me, I don't know, Lindsay, if you're coming through Zeropia, or our organisation helped me to actually establish some new friends as well. And obviously like-minded people, and I think that's the pressure's off a little bit, isn't it? With you always feel like you've got to live up to an expectation of other people.
Absolutely.
But in the friendships I formed here, I definitely so I'm really pleased to see that, Lindsay, because you will hopefully make some connections here. Definitely.
You'll gain a heck of a lot, Lindsay. But I'd like to just use your quotes there to try and explain to everybody about some thoughts that we have that generate feelings, because you've kind of said that the friendship situation is causing you issues. You've already said that the anxiety is the thing that stops you, and the feeling as a direct result of that is you put there, it's sad and lonely. So when if you join us, or I can see you're joining us now, great. We kind of give you some things that helped people that have been in exactly the same positions as yourself. So I just wanted to use that to kind of highlight to everybody how you can see that thoughts turn to feelings. And then you need to understand, if you don't want to be constantly sad and lonely, identify where you need to start facing some things and start to become comfortable and feeling a bit uncomfortable. So in that kind of situation, for me, knowing that I've been there already. I know exactly where people can start to get some benefit. When we talk about person-centered, that's the kind of thing we kind of recognize. We're not going to say, well, you need to pick up a textbook and then read this book all about how you can get friends and influence people, because that clearly does not work. You'd have done that many years ago. So when we talk about person-centered, we get to understand what people's struggles are. And I think that's why both of us found joining Ethiopia, we got so much benefit, because did you get the feeling that you weren't just a person that was looked at by diagnosis or anything like that? It was all about Neil. It was all about Catherine.
And to feel actually that you weren't on your own. So, you know, people who are a little bit more lonely, you've got this whole community here, and actually making connections is fundamental to our well-being. We need to have friends, and we need to have people that we can turn to. You know, so I think that making friends and perhaps coming through the workshops, Lindsay, will be really helpful for you.
And I totally agree. And it's I'm quite pleased to know that you're coming. So I'm sure that either one of us will probably meet you in the future. Sarah, just a quick one there. You're saying that you'd like to come back and get some support, which I'm so pleased to hear. So you know that you could self-refer. And now I just want to point this out to not just to you, Sarah. That's where you have to sometimes reach the point, because it's going to be fearful picking up the phone. I completely understand that. But you've got to ask yourself, guys, if you don't actually take that first step, you're staying unwell, and you're choosing, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully, you're choosing to stay unwell. And that sounds harsh, but what I mean by that is you're never going to be able to take a step unless you kind of get over that uncomfortability. And then another part that you said was, and do workshops face to face again. And it's clear with some people that in itself creates problems, and we can get into the point where we start to overwhelm ourselves. So, you know, in terms of that, if somebody said to me, I need some help, I'm going to reach out, and then I'm going to do lots and lots of workshops, that might be too much for them. So I often say, don't I, about you need to kind of make sure you do this in the right pace, a bit like you did, and a bit like I did, because I don't know if you felt this, but I was overwhelmed initially, got myself to an element of wellness, and then straight away I was overwhelmed again when I was a new identity. So we kind of understand, but if I hadn't have gone through that process incrementally and tried to do that relatively quickly, then there is a strong possibility that I would have bailed out. I wouldn't have come to the workshops. So if you're starting, and it's good to hear people like Lindsay and people like Sarah, that you clearly want to move from where you are to somewhere else, that it's going to be a big, in some respects, sometimes painful step to take.
And you sort of got to prepare yourself for that, I think, for the journey, because if you're coming in, you need to, like we said earlier, it's got to be 100%. It's going to take everything from you. Don't go gung ho, Neil.
That Sarah, bless her. I said that once in one of my lives, and that obviously has connected with you, Sarah. Don't go gung ho. And I can't tell you any stronger, any of you, that once we set our expectations and they're too high, what we've kind of done is we've set ourselves up for failure. And that in itself kind of creates unhealthy emotions, unhealthy thoughts, which are the things that we're trying to get away from. So thank you for reminding me, Sarah. That's why it's gung ho.
So some of the things that actually up on the board, it says there on the board, I'm thinking I'm a teacher still, on the computer. What small steps can you take to confront these negative thoughts? So we are all guilty of having negative thoughts. Still, I have negative thoughts, but it is all about challenging those negative thoughts and actually listening to those thoughts and saying, right, what evidence have I got that that's actually going to happen? And often I have no evidence. It's a random thought that's come into my head. And then you've got to challenge that. And that's quite hard, but you have to do that. There's something else that you can do that I found really useful. So you get a thought, you're never going to make it going out tonight. It's going to be a disaster, okay, if you go out tonight. So sit with that thought, hold that thought for 5 minutes or so, give it a bit of time, and then just let it go. You've given it some time, and then you're going to move on. So you're not saying I'm not going to listen to that thought. The thought is there, so you have to deal with it, else it's just going to keep going back, niggling away at you again. So deal with the thought, sit with it, have a think about it, think about the evidence for or against, and then let it go and move on. Because you can't, and this is my problem, was just sitting with ruminating thoughts continuously around my head about you're not good enough, you won't be able to do it, and you'll make a disaster of it if you do attempt to do it. But I never actually challenged it. I accepted it.
That was so beautiful, because we've kind of discussed that, wasn't it? And you kind of hit it on the head there. If you get the thought, you've not dismissed the thought.
No.
You've kind of accepted that's the thought, and then you've taken the relevant action. You've bought yourself a bit of time.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And then when you said about let it go, you kind of almost done the dissecting. So that thought is possibly not as strong as it was initially.
Yeah.
And then you're in a position to say, let it go, or I need to take a response.
Yeah.
That might have been that you decide that you weren't going to go, but you sit with it better.
Yeah.
And you don't ruminate.
No.
Yeah.
No. Because that's the problem, isn't it? We sit with these thoughts. They just go on and on. I know if I was going out somewhere for a meal, I would have started thinking about it 2 weeks previously. There's nothing about the day before. I would have thought that entire meal through and what was going to happen, how it was going to play out. And actually, in my head, that was how it was going to play out by the time I got there, because I'd spent 2 weeks thinking about it. But now, like I say, hear the thought, give it some time, challenge the thought if you want to, and just let it sit there and just let it go if you can, and start to think about the positives. Give it, what evidence have I got to support that thought? What's happened the last time? Has this ever happened? Have I gone out for a meal and it's been an absolute disaster? In my head, I've been out for many, but I haven't actually. So it is actually thinking these thoughts through and saying, is that really a real thought for me?
And I think you guys could tell that Catherine and both myself, we have a bit of a passion around it now, because we know those kinds of things work. Now, we've spoken about today about the fear of getting well. I want to just very quickly conclude and say you've done, or you're doing, or you're embarking on a lot of hard work. When you get to the end, there is naturally going to be some fears involved. It's really using some tools that hopefully you'll learn through your journey. And if not, then it's almost a bit like Catherine and I have been saying, don't self-sabotage, do some positives. So we're going to leave it there. It's been a really nice discussion.
It has.
So just before we go, any of you that want to refer yourselves to Isopia, then you're able to do that via your GP. So please contact your GP and just ask some information about Isopia. We do have our website, so you can go onto our website and have a look at what we can provide for you. If anybody is actually in any type of situation where they need some support, just make sure you use the crisis line. That's available. You can find it online. You can get the numbers and things, and there is Safe Haven here. that operate when we're kind of closed between 5 and 10 o'clock. So probably, please use those kinds of things. But it's been a joy speaking to you. And I'm sure you probably would all agree that Catherine's fears were not really fears. She's faced them and she's done a cracking job.
Thank you, Neil.
So we'll do this again next week. I think it might be Thursday next week, and you'll have a couple of wellbeing coaches on a different subject. So hopefully we'll see you all then. So thank you and goodbye.